All right, kicking off the new year, I'm excited to have Hawthorne Union's Jesse Trout and to talk about Enneagram and also potentially be looking at both mistype and also what Enneagram calls countertype. So you mentioned you were looking at your report. Would love to hear from you first and foremost.
Yeah. So, in looking, going back and looking a little bit more deeply into some of what the report said, obviously you and I have talked a lot over the years and kind of typed me out like at an 8 with a 7 wing, you
Right.
know. Um, but in looking at the
My
result,
twin. I like that you have twins behind you, right? Like my
yeah,
twin.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
hmm
yeah. In looking at the results, it just for all the descriptions and everything, the way that this assessment described the 7, it's like, man, that actually feels really on the nose for
Okay.
me. And I was kind of surprised. I definitely felt even before looking at that as like a 7 wing, I definitely felt a little bit of resonance, but I didn't feel like that was kind of the primary lens that I was through which I was viewing the world. But looking more into it now, um, yeah, it feels like there's a lot more alignment than I think I ever thought before.
Okay. Yeah. So it was a number of years ago, it's probably even almost a decade ago, that we thought you were type 8. And then a handful of years ago, maybe 5 or 6, that you probably took this and it typed you as a 7. And one thing I can show you briefly, not to geek out too much on the data, because obviously we prioritize your experience, is as we look at this is something that I see on the coaching side. And I pulled up my report just because we're pretty similar. Um, you do score 91 out of 100 as an 8, but 100% of the time you score as type 7. So it makes sense that the 8 is a resonance, but at least according to this assessment, which boasts, high 90s accuracy, you and I still do match in that action style is 8, feeling style is 2, thinking style is 7. But in comparison, it would be easy for us to say, like, oh, you're an 8. But as we look deeper at it and some of the core motivations, um, you did score higher as a 7. Also, with the social instinct, it's what they call the countertype. So they show up a little bit different. The 7s that are social instinct are your keyword is sacrifice, and 8s with social instinct, it's solidarity. So you and I both, your instinct follows you as you move around. So we have that kind of mix of sacrifice and solidarity, regardless of if one of those words resonates with you more than the other.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of personal evolution. Frankly, I see myself leaning a lot more towards that sacrificial, that service element, that being of service component, and the service lens that I'm kind of looking at everything through in so many different areas of my life. That's obviously in the coaching context. I feel like it's a pretty natural fit to be looking at that as a service expression. Um, but I do my best to have that be the case everywhere else. If I'm well, I guess it's probably natural in facilitation too, but coaching, facilitation, working with college age folks in my profession, definitely anything and everything contained in my life in the recovery community, all that, like everything is on a I try to keep it on as we say, a service plane, a service basis. I haven't always been that way. I think maybe there was probably a part of me at my core that was, but I don't think I was as aware and intentional about that at all times, and that being the way that I wanted to lead, if that
Mhm.
makes sense too.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, this will apply to Jesse as the man as well, in addition to
Yeah,
Jesse, the coach and
yeah.
professional. But also, what comes to mind for me, I don't know that you have the guardedness that the 8s tend to have. I associate more the like FAFO. You're the one who taught me that phrase, right?
Yeah.
And the like all in, let's go. Even how on Zoom you like lean all the way in, like
Oh
when
yeah.
you're coaching. I love that. So it's I mean, obviously you get to decide and you get to try this on and try this on for as long as it feels like a fit. But I am seeing, as we kind of look at the descriptions and we can unpack this a little bit more, your 8 is very strong, but I do see some of the 7 in your enthusiasm, even in so like the 7 deadly sins, like 8's quote unquote sin is lust, like a lust for life. It's not necessarily sexual, but it can be.
Sure.
But the 7's is gluttony. So even as you talk about recovery and addiction and things, right? Like things
Those
like
things
that,
go hand in glove.
we got exactly, we got lust and what is it, gluttony kind of hand in hand. So sometimes it can be hard. Sometimes it can be hard to tell. The Enneagram is often easiest to tell when we're not at our best, but at the same time, when we're not at our best, sometimes we ricochet into the other types, and so then we're not as recognizable anyway.
Sure. No, that's really interesting. Yeah, because for good or for bad, I find myself, if it's something that makes me feel good, then yes, I have a like a voracious appetite to consume or pursue, right? And so that's kind of both of it, right? That you could make an argument. I think that the if it makes me feel good part is like a little bit of the lusting after, right? And then
Mhm.
the voracious over like aggressive consumption or overconsumption kind of could be the gluttony part of it. To me, in my experience, those things, right hand, left hand. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? The lust drives the gluttony, so to speak. When it comes to that lust for life or lust for lusting after, that something that you're gonna pursue in that way.
Mhm. Well, I think it's a good point though if you think about right hand, left hand, because you did score in a way that they're very similar. So
Yeah.
there's a high level dominance of both. I think one thing from a differentiation perspective, not that it's essential that we're like, oh, this is your type and this is for sure. As a 7, you would be a thinking type. So more in the anxiety quadrant, but more likely 7s tend to think about the possibility. What's all the potential, the possibility, the freedom? Just a constant kind of going of the mind. 8s are more the gut type, the body type, and focus on the instincts. And I know you
Hmm.
tap into both of those, but does one of those, even as I describe that, does one of those resonate more than the other for you?
I mean, I definitely still feel like I'm more instinctual, more more kind of gut driven. Am I a chronic overthinker at the same time? Yeah, probably. But when it comes time to make decisions, I go with my gut almost unanimously.
Okay.
I am not I don't overanalyze. I I get caught into that rumination and things like that sometimes when my mind wanders, but when it comes to making decisions, I don't overanalyze. I don't overthink those. I just kind of like go with what feels right.
Okay. And do you have a more of a relationship with anxiety or anger, like as far as expression?
Ooh,
I know, right?
um,
Big question.
yeah, that is a big question. I would say probably probably anger, although I will definitely say that I've noticed more in the last 3 or 4 years feelings that I can now identify are as anxiety that I never really put that label on it before, but I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure that's anxiety actually.
Well, also, if we think about
Well,
what's socially acceptable for men, especially
yeah,
young men in the South, of course, anger is allowed, anxiety, not so much.
anger is the default. Anger is borderline celebrated,
Mhm.
right? Because anger is almost looked at as some sort of empowerment. That reaction is expected, not just accepted, but expected in a lot of contexts. So,
Well, I think just even with what you said about instinctual base and anger base, it makes sense to me why we typed you as an 8. And so it'll just be really, it's up to you what you want to take away from this time. I think there's being the counter type, the social instinct. So having that mind for other people, what's happening in the room, where's the power in the room, where's the fun in the room, looking at that social, those 8s and 7s are a little bit harder to pin. So you're just, we're just not able to clearly pin you. So that doesn't have to be the goal for today's conversation, but that is something we can continue to unpack if you want to.
yeah, no, totally. And frankly, there's a part of me that really kind of appreciates, for once, not really being able to carry a clear label. And I
Okay.
know that that sounds a little weird,
No?
but what I mean by that is I feel like I do have a lot of I do fit into categories pretty neatly in a lot of areas of my life, or I do have labels, or I am part of this thing, or believe that way, or this or that. Well, you know what? Damn it. Maybe for once I can just be a little bit less defined, a little bit more
Okay.
fuzzy.
Yeah. All
So
right.
whatever, you know, we'll,
Yeah.
we'll we'll work with what shows up. You know what I mean?
Okay. Excellent. So I'm happy to give you a tour, but I
Sure.
also want to see what either questions or particular resonance or if there's anything you want to unpack.
Yeah, I will say in looking back at some of this, when I looked like at page 11, the development exercises, um, but something obviously you know me pretty freaking well now, and something that just screamed out at me was one of them says recognize how your idealism and dedication to the moral high ground may be seen as much of a drug as more typical seven indulgences used to avoid your inner emptiness. Practice the sobriety of embracing an imperfect reality. That I was like, what is this, you know? So but yeah, any of these little some of these development exercises I think are pretty neat, and is some of these deeper insights I'd be more than happy to like to unpack,
Hmm.
you know, and tease out, because this is just so much more. I think again, I think when I looked at it before, I certainly glanced over it and was like, "Oh man, this is really cool," and I did not appreciate the depth that this sucker goes into. This is kind of incredible. There's so much there, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we can tease that out. We can unpack those. Any ones you want to start with?
Oh, something I just well, I'll go at your pace because I could sit here and pick out 1,000 different things, but yeah, I will say one thing that really I want to either come back to when I get down to like page um 20, 21, 22, and it's talking about some of these like strain and happiness. My happiness level is low. Um, you have more stress than joy in your life at present. General circumstances in your life are detracting from your ability to feel happy, excited, and hopeful about things. That's this really interesting context, and I'm trying to like
Well, it
think
was
about.
June 30th, 2020.
Oh God, well, yeah, I think everybody's happiness level was probably pretty freaking low.
So
June
I
June
just well
30th of 2020.
and also in I found with the sevens that I talked to in 2020, it was especially difficult because there was so much anxiety and so much fear, and sevens are so buoyant and focused on outcome that it was difficult for them because the positive outlook they naturally have and there was just a more kind of somber sobriety.
Yeah,
So
there was no positivity coming around.
and then
Hell,
also
it
people
was
weren't
fear
necessarily
porn.
receptive to it.
Yeah, not at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Not at
So
all.
what I just want to call so the stress and the strain, we can absolutely talk about that. Stress and the strain is not Enneagram related, but it is
Mm,
going to be a snapshot of you on June 30th, 2020.
yeah, and I'll, yeah, yeah. We can, like I said, we can kind of go at your pace. I'd love to have you take the reins as far as kind of walking us through some of this material.
Okay. I'll take the reins for a little bit and then I'll hand it back to you because the reality is that happiness being low also for a seven and to be able to admit that is that's deep work. That's you doing your work right there. But then also that's an emergency. It's like when an eight feels vulnerable, if a seven doesn't feel fulfilled or like there's possibility, it's, and this is my impression. I don't identify as a seven, but the seven within me, the part of when we look at 2020 and what was difficult is all of the restrictions and the limitations and the lack of opportunity and hope. That was very and then just not knowing how long that would exist.
Yeah, sure.
So, okay. Well, I'll call just in the spirit of kind of making a little bit of differentiation, you mentioned page 11. So I wanted to show you my page 11. So if you were an 8, it's a little bit different. Your development exercise is a little bit different. Taking care of yourself. You can't give to the world without securing your own oxygen. Avoid the seduction of busyness and create quiet spaces. Practice non-attachment by stepping back. So those are the development areas. But what really resonated with me and was intense for me, like what you said about sobriety, was you're more likely to, this last one, you're more likely to align to others and getting what they need than you are to assert what you need for yourself, and may hide your own feelings behind a gentle, supportive demeanor. And I was like,
Yeah.
damn,
Oh.
damn, these reports do not play. So, there's that champion fighter against injustice. So a lot of this I think is probably would resonate with you because your 8 is so strong and that 8 social. Um, but the I don't know how much you get caught up in savior and protector, and I don't know how much you hide your own feelings. So I just that would be a kind of if you were a 7 versus an 8. So I just offer that up.
Yeah, I can definitely get caught in the protector role at times. That's I have a natural tendency towards standing up for the quote unquote little guy, or defending someone who needs defending and things like that. It's easier for me, I think, to check that now though too, because it's a little bit about, well, also check your assumptions about the dynamics and things like that. But that definitely is my impulse. My instinct is to protect for sure.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting, I have spent a lot of time in the last probably month and a half, 2 months, reflecting on some conversations that I did not have in this past year with people that have been in kind of critical positions in my life, because I was worried about the need to spare their feelings or protect their feelings. That's been a theme for me for a couple of years now, where I just realized that there are so many times that I hold back because I don't trust myself to not say something that's going to be really out of pocket or like really aggressive. That's something, of course, that I have been actively trying to work on. Not It's not that I have a ton of evidence that says like, hey, when you start running off at the mouth, man, you say some crazy stuff. It has happened for sure, but that's not a regular thing. But I've overcorrected for those few times that has happened so much that I get to a point where I'm afraid. Well, yeah, we'll call it. I'm afraid. I'm afraid to almost to say anything in a difficult conversation context, because it feels like I'm so all or nothing. I'd rather be nothing than say everything that's on my mind and destroy a relationship, that I'm probably going to need moving forward. I don't trust myself to not say something like awful to some people, which is really, really strange. As
Mm.
somebody who's I mean, we're kind of professional communicators, right? So I should be, and I don't like to should too much, but I should be able to trust myself. I should be willing to trust myself more with the way that I communicate with other folks. I just need to be more intentional and less instinctual in the moment and gut driven sometimes when it comes to, like, I need to prepare for a conversation more so than what I would for a coaching session, which is, hey, we're going to coach what shows up. We're going to be with what shows up. Well, if I be with what shows up when I have some really intense feelings around something, that could get sideways real fast. You know what I mean?
What would change if you did trust yourself in those moments?
Well, I wouldn't feel like I wouldn't have. I would say what needs to be said, because there's stuff I need to get off my chest that I've needed to get off my chest for a while now. That's with some family members. That's with some professional like folks in that relationship context. That's with some friends, and I carry that stuff and let it fester rather than communicating, um, And if I trusted myself, then I would communicate it in a healthy way, and feel a little bit. I'd feel a little better about myself because I'd have some boundaries back, and I would not be carrying this unresolved crap inside, because I don't, just like anything, that'll eat away at you, And if I've got those unresolved situations, then there's a level of resentment that's around it as well, and that's so corrosive. That's just not good. I can't, even if that stuff is in the back, buried in the back of my consciousness, if I'm carrying around that resentment from these unresolved things or unsaid things, then it's eating away at me whether I know it or not. It's weighing me down whether I'm consciously aware of it or not, and I'm not at my best.
Yeah. There's a lot there, man.
Yeah. This is something I've been reflecting on for a couple of weeks now. That's a benefit of taking a few weeks off around Christmas.
Yeah.
a little bit of time to really, yeah, to kind of get real with myself on some things.
Yeah. Is there something you would like for us to explore or unpack with that?
Well, I mean, I have a couple of conversations in mind that need to be had. It's just, yeah, it's interesting to think about what in the family or like more personal context. It's a little easier to find it's easier to give myself permission to explore those conversations. Some of them that exist within like the professional context, it feels a little more like, hey man, I don't know when the time would be right to do this, if that makes sense, right? Because what's at stake ultimately? What's at stake?
Oh,
Because
yeah,
these
it
are,
makes sense. Jesse, we're twins.
you
We're twins on
know,
this thing. We maybe are a slightly different, but I get you.
yeah. So it's like some of the work stuff that I've left unsaid for a little while uh is really easy to eat away at me, and it's really easy for my mind to drift. It doesn't take much at all, but the flip side of that is those might be the conversations I need to have the most intensely, but those are the ones I'm most concerned about carrying too much intensity into,
Mhm.
because that's some big emotions around that, and I need to be able to trust myself to handle it. I don't want to ever not acknowledge my emotion, right? That's critical data for me and for, I think, anybody. I don't think there's a world that we exist in where we should be like all facts, no emotion, or all emotion, no facts, no logic or whatever, right? It's always, I think, always a mix on a sliding scale, right? For me, though, I need to be sure that I acknowledge those emotions, feel those emotions, but I cannot let them drive the bus for sure in this context, because that'll carry me pretty far to a conclusion that I don't think is healthy for anybody.
I wonder though if that's a limiting belief.
Uh, it maybe. Um, but again, in this case, if we're talking about professional context,
Sure.
I think that additional bit of input, I think, um is valuable too. Just because if it was a different context, maybe it'd be a little bit of a different reaction. I think in if I'm heightened emotionally, I don't think I should be letting my emotions drive the bus. But again, I don't want to dampen them out or just completely sideline them, because that's important as
Mhm.
well. But I don't want to let my emotions carry me away, because that gum, I've been a guy since I was a little kid that could have a bad temper or could get really carried away emotionally. And then ultimately I've seen time and time again, if I get really carried away emotionally, I don't end up having the healthy outcome that I want from the situation. I don't end up saying what probably truly needs to be said, because I'm so wound up, and I will attack, and that doesn't do any good for anybody if it's a relationship situation, especially.
Mhm. If it's okay with you, let me show you what I'm seeing through the lens of the Enneagram in case
Sure,
it helps reveal something.
sure.
So for your Enneagram, at least in 2020, there's a number of factors happening. So first of all, the ones that you score highest in are type 7, type 8, but type 2. So we have the double assertive of the 7 and the 8. We got a lot of power. It's the only double right next to each other power. The 7s, I feel like, have some sparkle, some pizzazz, and a little bit more friendliness to it. And the 8s are more like a tank we're going through. But having 2 as your feeling style means that you do care about the impact. How's this happening for other people? What's showing up for other people? So there's a way that constantly, the way I relate to what you're saying is kind of like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is it worth me saying this? But then also, as a powerful person, am I communicating this in a way that people can actually hear it? Or have I just like shattered all the glass and then now it's a disaster and we're not moving forward? So some of it is the whole like great power, great responsibility that I think comes with the 7 and the 8. But then also with the 2, and then even like sacrifice, you're in a way, it sounds like sacrificing what you have and need to say for other people and other people's feelings, but that has a consequence as well. And I say that without judgment. I got my own challenges on my side of the fence with that one.
No, I think you're spot on. And I can tell. I mean, I have experienced the collateral damage of that internally for quite a while now, carrying those stuff and leaving those things unsaid. I'm not typically a person who leaves things unsaid. And not having had those conversations, it feels, yeah, it eats away at me, but I also, again, I know that I need to have those conversations in a way where I can be heard and it will be received. And if I come with like really inflamed emotion or just kind of ride the wave of that when I'm in the moment, that should shut somebody down. If somebody came, let me say this, if somebody came at me the way that I think that there's a part of me that would want to come at them with some of this stuff, there's no way I would be receptive to what they had to say. It would be attack and attack back. And that nobody wins there. You know what I mean? That just destroys relationships. So I
Yeah.
think that's a little bit of like, okay, I need to check myself here, but I've got to stop leaving conversations unhad or things unsaid, you know?
I'll say for myself, though, in case this helps, there's also from a safety place, though, when someone's strong enough to handle you at that level, at least for me, there's a safety there because you've never come at me swinging. But if you did, I'd be like, Jesse, flag on the play, what you got? And I think you would instantly disarm. But someone's got to be strong enough. I think that's the hard thing for me as an 8 is that someone has to be strong enough to not be afraid when I'm coming at them swinging. And
Mm,
that's counterintuitive for folks. But it's like it's part of why you likely are so successful working with people in toxic masculinity. I work as last chance before a last resort before termination coaching because that kind of those some of those assertive over whether it's over masculinized or toxic behaviors, some of those were able to just show up and be like, yo, knock it off.
yeah.
Like you're not coming across. So I acknowledge you recognizing and seeing the problem when you are the perpetrator of that, absolutely. But I also recognize that, at least for me, from an 8 lens, some of that is about safety. But it does mean ultimately that I'm not that I shouldn't have a better expression, but that sometimes it means that I'm not safe enough to actually express in the way that I want to express.
Yeah.
So it's a different context, and you've taken it to the ring on the MMA fighter side. So you have
Yeah.
a different context with it. But also, I mean, just even look at how much we work out. So, I double, even triple my workouts when I'm going through a lot. And I know you double on a day. You're a daily double,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're a daily double. So that's even something to think about as well, is like, because sometimes it's kind of like, where's that energy going to go? And you have that energy. So, one thing on the Enneagram side, because you're bringing up a lot of important stuff, but I just think this might be helpful. So, at least when you took this in 2020, you came out as like action first. So, this might be why we thought you were an 8 or you score so high as an 8, is because that instinctive action, like action people come in hot. Like that's just kind of your temp, that all or nothing that coming in hot. Then you have a lot of feelings. You might say that you overthink things, but the order here is actually, at least when you took this assessment, was fire, ready, aim. So you're firing before you're even ready. And then there's a kind of like, oh, snap, like, did I aim in the right place? But it's almost like an afterthought in comparison. So how does that land?
Yeah, I think that I have been aware of that tendency in myself, and I've been trying to actively like hold on, think. But as I'm an avid overcorrector as
Okay.
well, so I also know that my overcorrection in some contexts here has been to go to trip all the way to the ready, aim, 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 never fired into the spectrum too. So yeah, I think that in this case, I think it was great. It was great awareness because yeah, I promise you, my default would be to over the years has been, to shoot to pop off and then apologize almost inevitably, right? And now it's like, well, no, man, you gotta be mindful of relationships and understand that you need to think about some of these things first. But again, I've gone too far to the end of the spectrum of just thinking and not doing when it comes to some of that stuff.
Okay. What's the benefit of the overcorrection
Well, it's safer,
for
but it
you
also
or for everyone else or both?
for everybody else a little
Okay.
bit. Yeah, and to a degree for me, but like it's also if I'm being honest, which me, I'm not going to be anything but that. Like I think it's a little bit too much fear based too. Like it's too much letting fear drive the bus. Like being afraid of what the consequences could be. Well, guess what? I'm paying consequences now. Other people might not necessarily see it or experience it. There might not be the external evidence, but I'm paying the consequences in here and in here by carrying this stuff around instead of addressing it or having it said. And it's I'll say this too. It's not like an overwhelming. I don't have like 30 people I'm freaking plotting on, sitting in my life or
The
whatever.
naughty list.
I don't. Yeah, but I've got like 4 or 5 people that I care about that I need to have an honest conversation with, wrapped in love and grace and understanding. But I need to say what I need to say,
Mhm.
because I've been carrying it around, and some of it there's a particular situation that's more family related that I'm starting to see some opening both in myself and then some of the other parties now that could get us to a conversation, but that situation goes all the way back to um well, it's not like ancient, but it goes back to maybe a year after I took that assessment. So it was in 2021. um and we're just now, and part of it is my doing. We're just now getting to a point of communication again, and dialogue again that could lead to having that conversation at some point. But to have carried that around for somebody again, that I'm in that recovery world, and a big part of the way that we have a healthy sobriety is to not carry around resentments and to deal with them and to take ownership of where we might have been wrong in a situation pretty quickly. And we're acutely aware of the corroding force that is carrying resentment. And I've been carrying some of this resentment for 3.5, 4 years now. A couple of the other situations are a shorter timeline, but for a person like me, any length of time carrying around a resentment is a big danger. That's a big problem. Um, yeah,
It seems like this is where we should go. Like, is this where you want to be? Because the Enneagram Schmenneagram, you know what I mean? We could talk about it. We could talk about it later, but it seems like this is what has emerged. Is this where you want to focus?
yeah. It's just I don't think I kind of saw that coming necessarily, but it's kind of what came out of some of the results and things
Sure.
from reading this assessment. So it's just, yeah, it's interesting and revelatory a little bit, but it's stuff that's been in the back of my mind for quite some time, obviously now. as
Okay.
well.
So if we spend some time here, if we unpack this a little bit, what would you like to take away?
Well, just a sense of how I can feel a little more trust for myself in having these conversations. It's maybe three, maybe four conversations in terms of with different individuals or what, but there's things that I've got to get resolved. You
Mhm.
know, just a better sense of more trust, and then also kind of how to approach the conversations as well.
Okay. So knowing that you scored as an action type, like how would your actions change like if you had this trust?
Well, I would actually act. I would actually act this time instead of dancing around, in this sort of like really passive avoidance of getting into the difficult stuff. Right? I would stop finding excuses to continue to put it off. Oh, we can only have this conversation in person, or this or that. Which some of them, yeah, it's kind of true. And if I keep using that excuse, though, it's never going to happen. You know what I mean? So
I hear you, Jesse, but I also, knowing you and knowing how hard you are on yourself, I also, from my lens, so take this as you will, from my lens, I don't see you not having these conversations because it's hard. I see you not having these conversations because you're trying to protect the relationship. So the challenge is that just turning up the heat on the conversation if it is in detriment to the relationship. I don't like, I mean, you scored a sacrifice, man. I score a solidarity. Just from a sacrifice and solidarity perspective, I don't see you doing that.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, if I couldn't get to a point of having these conversations in a healthy way, which is what I've been so hesitant about all this time, if I couldn't get to that point, then I just wouldn't have the conversation.
Okay.
Because
And you're
yeah,
living
I
that
would.
now, right?
Yeah, I'm living it, and I
You're
would
living it now.
rather than destroy or damage irreparably those relationships. I would rather eat the pain,
Okay.
than
Well, and there we go. Sacrifice. There you
yeah,
go, man. That's your word. It might not
yeah,
be the word you chose, but it's the word that at least your assessment results are like, hey, you know what? If it comes down to me hurting you or you hurt or me hurting you or me hurting, then you choose me hurting. And
yeah,
every single one of your numbers on there chooses that.
yeah,
But and this is probably the seven in me, is the eight and the seven. My thing is if you don't like the terms, renegotiate. And if you still don't like the terms, change the game.
mm,
Because the thing is that whether it's eight or seven, like you can't keep us down. Not if there's
yeah,
something that we want. Only we can keep us down, right? Only Jesse can say you can't do it. If someone else says you can't do it, you'd be like, F you, watch this.
yeah. That's generally what I would need. It was just somebody else telling me I can't do it. you
Okay.
know.
And so, but we've talked about that in the past, right? So if someone told you you can't do this, what would you do?
Well, my instinctive reaction would be to let me show you. Let
Okay.
me show
So
you how fast I can do it.
okay. Well, Jesse, you are telling yourself right now that you can't do this.
Yeah,
So let's see how fast you can do it.
yeah. I mean, I just have that prove it instinct, but
Yeah.
I don't often uh turn that
On yourself.
instinct at myself. And not
Yeah.
often. Well, in some contexts, I do. When it comes to like the workout stuff or whatever, that's easy. That's a default instinct to have that prove it instinct there. But obviously, with this one, it's this particular situation or this set of situations. It's just nothing's really worked.
Yeah. I do want to honor though that the choice that you're making to not hurt, I honor that choice. I
Yeah,
think the challenge is though, at least on the eight side of the fence, is if we see ourselves as the enforcer of the universe and don't trust that the universe is going to take care of itself. It's like who are we to say, right?
yeah,
And who are you to have to hurt instead of, yes, there might be some hurt feelings, or you're like maybe not. Because I feel like if you had a problem with me, I feel like you would say it very clearly and we wouldn't have a problem. But
yeah,
that's probably a different level of trust.
yeah. Because I know you in the context of Well, in a context I don't know that I know those other people in, even if some of them are my family, like I don't know how emotionally, like
Mm.
I don't know, emotionally available doesn't feel like the right phrase, but like how
Emotional
just like
maturity.
open, yeah, open and mature, um, receptive, kind of globally aware of their impact or their emotions and things like that. Just not as, maybe I don't know if they're whether yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And now that I'm talking now that I don't know in my way through it, I'm like, well, hell, maybe there's a part of not trusting some of the other people on the receiving end of the conversations too. Not the, not trusting in this case, like not trusting how emotionally ready they might be for some, or the emotional impact or their ability to regulate their emotion. It has nothing to do with, obviously, with honesty and things like that. That's not the trust issue here, but yeah, I don't know how much I trust them to receive what I'm saying. And I'm not asking necessarily for things to change necessarily, right? I don't that but it's a, hey, I need to say this because I need you to hear it. I need to have it said, and I need you to hear it. You really, hurt my feelings, or you really impacted me in this way, or this felt really unfair, or whatever else. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm just asking you to acknowledge that, like, hey, yeah, it happened, and you played a role in it. And whether you apologize or not, that's up to you. That's your business, right? Would it be cool? Yeah, but I'm not here digging for a freaking apology from anybody. Just an acknowledgement of, like, yeah, that happened, and it probably could have been different. You know what I mean?
I do. And I also know that the how they acknowledge is not in your control, but that
Right.
you said it is. That you
Yeah.
said it and how you said it. So for my thing is that I've definitely when I'm not a hesitator naturally, but when I've hesitated to give feedback or have tough conversations, sometimes when I have those conversations and it blows up in my face, I'm like, well, that's why I didn't have it, right? There's been other
Right.
times I've been pleasantly surprised, but those people do their work, right? So the thing is from my perspective is like all you can do is offer. And what I say to my leaders is make the best decision you can with the information you have at the time. And then a truth I try to live myself is stand by what you said or did. None, and not if you're like, oh man, like I could have handled that so much differently or whatever. But the thing is that when it leaves you and how it leaves you, after that moment, it's not in your control.
Yeah, and and there's a school of thought that it's not my business either, right? Because yeah, they like how they what I am not going to approach a situation like this with the intent of hurting anybody,
Of
of
course.
course, right? But if there is a little bit of hurt feeling, I won't have been the I won't have been the driving force behind it by the way that I approach this, and that I can't carry that burden either, or that responsibility, because I know, again, that's what the hesitancy has been about. I want to make sure that I'm not approaching this in a way where I'm attacking anybody, because that's not going to be any good. Well, knowing that, I know that I'm not going to, right? And yeah, I can't be responsible for the way they receive it necessarily. I can 100 again, yeah, I'm 100%. What's 100% in my control is the fact that I do approach it, that I do actually have a conversation, and how I show up to that, and how honest I am, but with that honesty wrapped in love. Not that honesty or authenticity as a cudgel. Not what a phrase that has been going through my mind for about 2 weeks now, and I don't want to turn this into like a catchphrase jargony thing, but like weaponized authenticity. I've thought about that for a long time. You know, there was a post on LinkedIn a couple, maybe 2 weeks ago, that I had my attention drawn towards, but it was a shared connection, and it was a person saying that people don't actually want your authentic self at work. I'm like, well, yes and no. I think they do, but what they don't want is for you to be authentic at them. They don't want weaponized authenticity, or authenticity, so to speak, as an excuse to be a jerk. I think that I think that there's plenty of cases in human history, especially this idea of authenticity has come to the forefront in the last 10 years. There are plenty of times that people have used that as an excuse to just be a jerk. Yeah, no, people don't want that. And if that is your authentic self, then you probably need to check that. No, you don't need to be bringing that to work or to any human relationship on a regular basis, right? But they don't want you to not be honest about what's going on. They don't want you to not acknowledge how things make you feel. They don't want to they don't want you hiding things. um they need to know who they're working with, so to speak. But yeah, so that was a little bit of a sideline diatribe there. But I don't want to weaponize. I want to show up as honest and open and loving, and again, not use authenticity or honesty as a weapon to attack people. I want to be rigorously honest, not brutally honest. Brutal honesty might feel good in the moment, but is that about making me feel good because I was just brutally honest to somebody who hurt my feelings? That's more about me feeling good. Rigorous honesty is just being honest and let the chips fall where they may.
How's your trust right now with yourself to do those things?
Well, the more I'm talking about it, the more trust I have in my capacity to do this. I don't know that I ever didn't trust that I have the ability to do it. It's when the rubber meets the road, am I actually going to do it? Am I actually going to hold my tendency to want to explode in check? Man, I'm also not a 21-year-old kid anymore. But I think I view myself sometimes through the lens of that guy, the guy I was in high school or college or even just right after college, where I was just temperamental. I could fly off the handle at any moment. I'm a grown up now. Do I not still have those temperamental moments? That'd be a lie. Of course I do. Right? I'm fiery. I am. And that is what it is. But it's not a fire that burns out of control anymore. You know? So I don't,
I'm gonna remember that, Jesse. That's a good line.
yeah, well, I don't know how many, I probably should make a note.
Yeah,
Because
good thing
again,
it's recorded.
yeah, it is recorded. And,
It's not a fire that burns out of control anymore.
yeah, because I mean, it was something that I was so fiery, it burned me up many, 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 many times because there was no level of control with a lot of things in my life for years. It's kind of well documented and obviously well discussed by you and I and plenty of times, and I don't make any secrets about it. But I'm not that person anymore.
Hmm. And Phoenix, you're still here,
Yeah,
and that's part of you.
yeah,
So I honor the part of you that is checking that behavior and checking that tendency. And it's been a number of years since we were 21.
yeah. For good or for bad. Sometimes I wish when I get up in the morning and I know that I'm going to go have a good run that I felt 21 again and not 44. When I wake up and I'm, oh God, that's
Yeah.
not great. But I wouldn't trade anything that goes on up here. I wouldn't trade for anything that used to go on up here at 21. That's a promise.
Jesse, what would you say to me if I brought this to you?
But probably would cut straight to it and be like, uh, what are you doing? You've acknowledged what's going on. You've acknowledged that this is a corrosive thing that's been affecting you for a little while now. Why is fear driving the bus? What should be driving the bus instead? Or what do you want to be driving the bus instead? Um, and when can you have these conversations?
Okay,
You know,
there it is. What do you want to be driving the bus instead?
love.
Okay. And with
For me, love is the antidote to fear. Faith and love are the antidotes to fear. You know,
okay. And so with faith and love, when you want to have these conversations?
well, there's at least one or two that I could have. I mean, as early as this week, sometime.
Okay.
There's one that probably should wait until next week, just knowing the context of other stuff that's going on in the working world and things like that.
Okay.
Um, but the ones that are a little bit more personal or like family oriented or whatever, I think could probably happen a little quicker.
Okay. I'm here.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Just for the sake of time, I know there's more we could do and more we could unpack. What are you taking away from today?
Well, first off, that I'm not 21 anymore, and that the fire is there, but it's not burning out of control anymore. Um, that I should trust myself. I have all the tools and skills and a pretty finely tuned and honed and earned skill set around having conversations. So I should probably trust that and trust myself and stop hiding behind fear and hesitancy. Um, yeah, and remember the truth that I've known for a long time. That's I'm responsible for me. I'm responsible for how I show up and how I present the information and how I carry myself in the context of it, but that I can't be responsible for their reaction or their response, you know, and that's a them thing, not a me thing. So I need to take care of all the me things for sure, you know, and have my side of the street clean, but beyond that, you know, it's truly in God's hands. Not no cliche, no joke, it's in God's hands. So
Yeah. And I would offer support. I know you have cultivated support for yourself, myself included, as excuse me, as you navigate these things. So
thank you.
if and when and as you want or need it.
Right
Okay.
on.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah.